Hey guys, welcome back to my channel for another IVF update. And this is a video that I actually did not plan on filming for many reasons. There's gonna be, and there is, just a lot of differences of opinions on this subject, but no matter what, I've always shared everything. And because I get this question a lot, I thought I might as well just address it and talk about it, even though I might regret this later. I don't know. But if you're new here, then obviously this is an IVF video journey. We are in the middle of IVF, and today I'm going to be talking about genetic testing of the embryos and whether or not my husband decided to do so. So please keep the comments clean. This topic in general is very personal to you in your specific situation, and just because you believe one way or did one thing does not mean a different couple didn't do the opposite. So I'm going to leave it at that, and let's go ahead and get into the video. So when you do IVF, you will be given the option. I'm pretty sure everywhere gives you the option, or at least most places I know give you the option of what is called PGS testing. This is genetic testing of your embryo. So basically what would happen if you decided to move forward with it, for one, there are consent forms to sign and have notarized. IVF in general has those forms, but there are extra forms for PGS testing. And how they test these embryos, at least with my clinic only does 5-day transfers. So you'll have your egg retrieval, they will fertilize the eggs. 5 days later, before they freeze the viable embryos, they will take a biopsy of those embryos and send them off to a lab that will test these embryos. And it stands for, I had to look, pre-implantation genetic screening. Apparently you can also do something called PGD, which is pre-implantation genetic diagnosis, but I'm talking about PGS because that's the most common thing, and that's our clinic what they do. So basically the proper term of what PGS does is it is the testing for overall chromosomal normalcy in embryos. So pretty much PGS testing, when they biopsy and take a few cells out and send it, they're checking, I believe, things like chromosomal abnormalities. I know when you get your results, you will see what chromosome is missing. If there's an extra chromosome, they can tell you things like that. So it's really good for someone who wants to kind of take care of, you know, just getting rid of the abnormal ones. A lot of times with abnormal embryos, they won't implant anyways, or they most likely will end in a miscarriage. And when you pay for something as significant as IVF, especially those of you paying out of pocket, you know it's not cheap. So doing this kind of helps you in a way, or at least that's what it's meant for. But keep in mind that PGS testing doesn't test for like certain diseases or conditions like cystic fibrosis, for instance. It won't check for that, so you don't have any idea if that embryo carries that. So another thing about PGS that you know if you get the testing done is the gender. They will be able to tell you when you get your results if the embryo is a female or a male embryo. This is where a lot of the opinions kind of come in, because if you are someone who wants to gender select, say you have 3 girls at home and you want a boy, you can do IVF, get the testing done, and only implant a healthy male embryo. And that's kind of where the opinions come in. And I'm sure I'm going to be asked this, and I'm not afraid of my opinions. I will tell you guys my opinion on gender selection a little bit later on in the video. So a lot of times your reproductive endocrinologist, mouthful, they will sometimes, or a lot of times, give their opinion on whether or not you should have it done. A lot of times they recommend it for moms over a certain age, like over 35. They recommend it for people who know they are carriers of something, women who have multiple miscarriages. They recommend it for situations like that. But keep in mind, if you want to do PGS testing, you're gonna pay for it. It doesn't come for free included in IVF. I'm sure we all wish it did. In our clinic's case, it's about $2,500 extra, and you have to do a frozen transfer. So if you're paying out of pocket, doing a frozen transfer in general and skipping a fresh costs more money. And PGS, you have to do a frozen transfer because it takes a week or two to get those results. So you're adding on the cost of PGS and the extra cost, added cost of a frozen transfer. Just things to keep in mind. I don't think you should do it for financial reasons. If you're going to do it or not going to do it, I think you should really weigh your options with your spouse on whether or not it's right for you. So with all that being said, did Brian and I decide to PGS test our embryos? And I think I've mentioned this before, I can't remember honestly, but we did not choose to PGS test our embryos. And I'll tell you why. And again, this is our personal choice, our decision, and I ask you guys respect that because I respect all of you, and I can only ask that you respect us and our decision because that's just rude. I mean, come on. Yeah, so we chose not to after talking to our doctor, and we chose not to because I have not suffered frequent miscarriages. I mean, I can't even get pregnant over here. I'm also only 26 years old. My husband's 36. As far as we know, male factor is the only reason why we have not gotten pregnant. And we have a 4-year-old daughter together who was absolutely healthy with no issues. So after talking to them, getting their very educated decisions or opinions and talking back and forth, we just decided that it wasn't for us and that we didn't want to or feel the need to. Will we regret that later on? I honestly do not know. A lot of our friends that we know who have done IVF also chose to not do it. I know a lot of moms, it's more appealing to not do it because you can do that fresh transfer, so the faster the better. Doing PGS does set you back about 6 to 8 weeks depending on how your clinic does frozen transfers. So it's really going to be a very situational thing. For those of you who have done PGS testing, please don't get upset at what I'm about to say because I've always been honest and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I pride myself on being honest on my channel. But the main reason why we didn't do PGS testing is all the reasons that I just mentioned. But one thing that kind of solidified us not doing it, just because you send your embryos off to the lab for PGS testing, you send your biopsies off. Say you send in 5 embryos and 3 come back normal. So those are the 3 embryos that you're going to be dealing with. I personally know people who have implanted PGS normal embryos and still miscarried them. And for me, I feel like if I put in what I knew was a PGS tested normal embryo, that I would think it was a guaranteed thing. And while your chances, when it is tested normal, while your chances technically, if that embryo implants are higher for a successful pregnancy, it's still not guaranteed. And that's really scary. Like, it's really, really scary. And just because it's a normal embryo does not mean that it's going to implant either. Which, I wish there was like a surefire way to get embryos, test them for them being perfect, put it in, guarantee it would implant, guarantee it's your take-home baby. Science is not there yet. I don't know that it's ever going to be at that point, at least while we're alive. But that kind of, to me, solidified us not doing it. I mean, that's definitely not the reason why we didn't do it, but I just kind of thought, yeah, that's kind of something else I'm not crazy about with it. And then I've also read some research saying that just because an embryo in the lab tests abnormal, it's not to say that you couldn't implant that embryo inside of you and it not correct itself, because research has shown that some embryos that were abnormal by the lab standards actually were implanted and they corrected themselves. I'm sure that's not like an every case scenario, but it does happen. So I would hate to discard an embryo that was abnormal by their standards, but could have been my 4-year-old daughter running around my house right now. So again, it's very personal, and I absolutely do not look down on anyone who wants to PGS test. I absolutely do not. If it's for you, then it's for you. Like, absolutely. I am supportive. If you want to do that, good for you. Like, good for you for taking the initiative to do that. If you don't want to, then you don't want to. To me, I don't feel like there's a right or a wrong to this. It's just, and I can't say this enough, but it's just personal preference and what you feel like is right for you. Now, going back to the whole gender selection thing, I will give my opinion on this, and half of you may not like it, and I'm sorry, but we are all allowed to have our own opinions, and if you are opposite of me, that is totally fine. Like, I don't judge you for your opinion, but I will share mine because I'm sure the question is going to come up. So, say my husband and I decided to PGS test, and we had, say we only have 3 embryos for one. So if we had them tested, you know, they may all be normal, they may none be normal, we may have 1 normal, we don't know. And so that's the chance that we're taking, which is fine. But say they all came back normal, and say we had 2 girls and 1 boy. I would not want to know the gender, so I would tell the lab to exclude the gender off of the results. Because personally, I would not want to be swayed by a certain gender. I would just want the best quality embryo first, or however we decided to do it. Because frankly, right now, we don't have any boys. My husband's the only one of his brothers having kids, and we would like a boy to carry my husband's last name, or it will end with him. However, I would not want to have like 2 perfect girl embryos and then a fair boy embryo and be persuaded to put the boy in and just leave the girls there, because technically, if I didn't know the gender, I would have put the 2 best embryos in. And I just don't know how I feel about that. I feel, for me personally, knowing the gender and picking it, I feel is too much like kind of like playing God, which I'm sure not everyone's gonna feel that way, and that's just kind of how I felt. But we didn't PGS test in the end, so it doesn't matter for us. But if you're someone watching my channel who did IVF for the purpose of gender selecting, then that's fine. That's your personal preference. I'm not going to be like, get off my channel, because honestly, I don't care. It's your opinion. And I'll just be happy if IVF worked for you, because you can hopefully inspire some of us who are going through it right now. So if you did or didn't gender select, that's totally fine. A lot of celebrities do gender select, and they're pretty open about it. But I've seen comments bashing them because they did choose that. So I think that most people don't agree with gender selection, and that's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna like march around protesting saying I love it, but I don't hate it and I'm not against it. But personally, it's just not for us. So I hope that answers all the questions about why we didn't choose, or why we chose to not PGS test. And I mean, honestly, if I was someone who went through like recurrent miscarriages, absolutely I would do PGS testing. Or if we had, say if Brian and I were carriers of something, I would PGS test. You know, I would, so I'm not against it, but this is why we chose not to for this case scenario right now. I can't say that if we did all of our embryos and we had to transfer all of them and I miscarry all of them, next time we probably would PGS test. So I think it's just kind of where you're at in your situation. And honestly, I can't really give you advice on if you should or not, because it's just such a personal decision. Embryos are very, very special. I mean, they can grow into be your babies, your young adults, your adult children who are going to get married someday. Like, it's hard to see that when you're just seeing little cells on a photo. But they're very precious. And Brian and I obviously can't make embryos on our own, so I take my embryos very seriously, and I did very seriously consider PGS but decided not to. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to message me, or on Instagram, DM me if you don't want to publicly post it, because I know that it is a little bit controversial. But I want to thank you guys for coming back into my channel and watching us and following on our journey, because the next video that I post, I will be able to tell you guys when we are transferring our embryo or embryos. I don't know how many we're going to transfer. I get that question a lot too. I will tell you guys whenever we have decided. We have to decide by this weekend because my husband is going to be gone for 4 weeks. And during that time, we will have the transfer. So we have to make a decision before he leaves. So my next update, I will be going over my calendar with you guys. And it's so surreal that it's here. And I'm happy that I'm healthy and ready to go. So thank you guys so much for watching. And I will see you on my next video. Bye.